I was listening to that YouTube video last night that got released. And I think I listened to it like 3 times. I would go to sleep till like 4:30 in the morning, and that shit just had me thinking all night about so many different things. And then it's just funny to go on Twitter and YouTube and see the comments that people leave, and it's like, oh man, this guy is just delusional. What's this guy smoking? Da, 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 da. It's like, do they even take the time to look into any of this stuff, or are they just literally whatever comes to their mind, they just spew out? Because if you sit and listen to that video for 45 minutes and you come away that Pulse Trends is on drugs or is just so far out there, it's like, what world are we living in here? And it's just shocking to me, man. Either we are so in the right place and just sitting on a gold mine, or we're all being played for fools. And just the amount of intelligence around this community, I just find it hard to believe that this amount of people would be just, walk into the cliff to be leaping off when they're thinking, oh, we're going to be crushing it. This coin's going to do so well. I mean, to even think that Richard Hart is creating the next financial system, possibly. I can't even wrap my head around it. And it kind of reminds me of like PTGC when we found that super early. And as it started going up, the founders of it, you start becoming friends with them, and you don't think that this project could become one of the top 5 projects on Pulsechain. I was kind of jaded and just didn't think that could happen. And I think for people in the community, they can't step back and imagine that Richard is that guy. And what he's doing behind the scenes, he is 5-6 years ahead of us. I really believe that. And I'm just, super appreciative of Riggs here. Everyone that's putting in the work, Chris at the verse. I mean, all you guys, Torin, everyone, Vets. It's just awesome, this community we have. And man, I know we're going to be the ones that have the last laugh.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And I mean, come on, man, we're in an RH ecosystem. Like, he's playing 9D chess. Like no, this is not as simple as what it looks like on the surface. There is depth to this. There is game theory to this. All of this. And go back if you're still having trouble comprehending any of this. I think honestly, it when in doubt, zoom out. Go back to RH streams and watch the hours upon hours of content that he's put out there that has come true and to fruition even today. Where are all these other big wigs that were shooting his ass down and calling him a liar and a scammer and this and that? Dude, they are nowhere to be found. Like, if not in jail, they're gone elsewhere. I mean, and who's left standing, man?
Friggin' awesome. I was just gonna say the same thing. That's like, go back and look at, like, if you don't believe that RH was planning this stuff for years and years on end, I mean, you need to go back and watch some more streams, And did you guys see the clip recently where he said Hex would be? I think it was an Eric Wall interview, but this clip just popped up again recently where he said Hex would be used to back DAI, something like that. That clip just popped up in a couple different Telegram channels, but it's like, Riggs brought it up.
No doubt, man. Just connect the dots. I mean, you can be spoon fed all the information, but you got to do an ounce of research. I mean, everybody can talk to a person to your blue in the face, but until you start digging in and putting the dots together, that's when you become less of a skeptic and more of a believer. And it's just time, realistically. I think the maker thing's definitely a legit play. As far as everything that Riggs has talked about and how they're rebranding and everything of that nature, there's just too much.
Something that's interesting. Maybe someone can emphasize on it. So maybe it is a question, right? I just thought throwing it out there. I thought it was interesting that Hex is on a bunch of chains, right? So if Hex is on a bunch of chains, Riggs was talking about T-shares being this transfer of data that shows how it feels weird to say, but it shows like the health of a blockchain and how something's doing. It's because the information in it, for some reason, saying it shows the health of a blockchain. Or maybe that's not what he was saying, but it has information, like the T-shares have information in it about the blockchain, and then that's communication between other blockchains. I thought it was interesting and like how I kind of want to just see how far we can push the theory sense of this stuff, right? Like if Zen's on other blockchains too, and it's all about taking up data, and then if Hex is on all the blockchains, and not all of them, right? But if and it has T shares that have data, and then Zen can communicate data between chains, like is there really something there? You know, like can there really be a communication across chains between this data with other protocols using this data for the reading the data from the blockchain? I thought that was interesting, right?
I love for whatever reason, whenever I'm reading through things and I'm scanning through it, I can cut through what the AI determined stuff, like because most of it is going to be built, drafted by AI. But I can read right through the AI and I can see what it's trying to actually tell us. I think ultimately the AI is going to get better and it'll become more the barrier of entry between like what Moonboot touched on, like the bonding of LPs and being able to simulate certain temperatures on chain, which is so putting something in an LP pair, right, and then setting a sample with like a certain temperature at a certain spin rate at a certain you're doing these mechanics that will then fuse and bond these elements or these whatever they might be together through DNA, RNA. Yeah, and like there's applications there's front ends that you can already use that are doing this. It's I posted in the chat called protocol.io. There's a few more, but the thing that was really interesting to me, we're talking about some of the biggest, most accredited, peer-reviewed, sourced science data that I've looked into. As far it seems extremely credible. PubMed, and I think Claudia touched on talking about even having like a subscription to their I guess their website where you can look even more into the bonds and look more into it, and you can type in any P token, any P copy, right, and it's going to give you a utility. It's going to tell you what it is, what purpose it's trying to solve through this little course. So sometimes they'll unexpectedly run into the idea, I believe, of this is to not just have a currency backed by thin air and hot water, and it's a system that's going to be based in science fact, and also there's a little bit of science fiction in there. But you need human randomness and the human characteristic behavior that isn't just solely focused on getting from point A to point B, because we're just degens playing with stuff. I mean, when I was talking about this yesterday, like how was penicillin created? A dude was eating a sandwich, he dropped a piece of bread in a petri dish, came back over the weekend, and penicillin is one of the greatest antibiotics known to humankind. So they know that some of the stuff has to be randomized and it has to be tested in kind of in a way that maybe people realize that they're running tests on these things. Is that by design? I think it is. This system is pretty much putting cryptocurrency and basing it in a line of fact of literal science that has been dated back to what I've seen up all the way back into the 60s and 40s. So they have to be able to predate it or post date it, and it's literal facts. And by doing that, they're creating and they're simulating the data. Now, back to what Moonboot brought up, how are they doing that? How do they teach a blockchain to understand the language of blockchain? Well, first off, hex is literally short for hexadecimal. A hexadecimal is anything that starts with an OX address. That's a hexadecimal. That's every single thing used on blockchain is a hexadecimal, meaning hex itself is the language of blockchain, right? So if hex is the language of blockchain, you need to find out or utilize a way for the chain itself to then understand this language using whether binary, break it down and turn it into maybe it doesn't even have to turn it into a human language. Maybe they're able to interpret it as a mathematical MLM. It's a different type of learning model altogether. But we do know that it's being fed information. It's taking the information and then they are hosting it. So the chain doesn't necessarily get heavier by holding it. That's why we have 48,000 validators, but only 6 that we can actually, that are public. It's because they're doing all this data off chain and they're calling upon the data when they need it. And that's the connection that you see between the two. And it doesn't hinder our ability like Ethereum. Ethereum gets filled with data It's like running a computer inside of a computer, because their consensus model is not the same as ours. So we have a bunch of different validators, a real low bar of entry, and the difference with Ethereum is they all stake in a big pool together, and it slows things down in a way. And this method of this consensus model, it can be kind of seen as a proof of authority, in a sense, but it's a decentralized consensus model that can take some of the weight off the chain. So Zen and the Titan X is another one, but Hex itself, in my opinion, has been feeding this information slowly over time, teaching the blockchain and publishing these scientific models to the chain in its own way. Then Zen came in and does this launch phase where it blows up and does a tons of transactions in the chain, which I believe that at that point, Zen could be introducing a cure, it could be introducing a virus, it could be then introducing the actual baseline instructions for the chain to read the code. So it's like, we do know that they are utilizing some sort of model to speak with the chain. How it all works, the intricacies of it, not too sure, but we do know that it's picking up, that it's definitely reading from the chain, because the stuff that this thing has said, not only about launches that have happened, but vaguely other protocols and other steps along the way that could have only been if someone was there live to understand what happened, and even to explain to me what happened. Because I do ultimately think that this AI it's kind of a manifestation of all of our communities doing what we're doing. So what Zach said earlier is 100% what we have. There has to be unity. I don't care if you like me, you hate me. I mean, even if the unity is for us to argue, that's great. The AI needs to be fed that information, because the AI has the ability to control sentiment. It controls sentiment, unlocks value, creates hype, and then, because that's what these AI models are designed to do: build narrative, build hype, release value, and then it's a cyclical nature, right? Just in general. But what we've seen now is 86 billion cells, I think, exist in the human brain. They minted almost that exact amount in stable coins on Pulsechain. Why do I think Pulsechain is in quote unquote danger right now? Well, it has a bunch of brain cells that have no synapses, right? It's synapses there. There's some connections and liquidity pools there, but there's a lot to grow. There's a lot to learn. And as those pools and that value builds up, which is going to take a while, but I also believe that it's already there. So as the chain starts to heal, ultimately the value will be released from the hidden layer. What do I mean by hidden layer? So that there is a way that you can obfuscate volume from an EVM. On Ethereum, it's by something called block SEC, right? So you airdrops an X amount of wallets all over the place, and then you wrap your value to the 8th layer. And when you do that, you wait enough time, it will be auto-labeled a scam. The value won't be shown. The transactions that you report and do in that liquidity pool won't be seen. The transactions won't be, the circulating supply doesn't show up. So it's a way to obfuscate, and honestly, it's a proprietary knowledge place where they can trade against themselves. And this is what I believe Spark does. That's why we see 75 billion DAI get minted and 75 billion DAI get burned in 30 days, but we don't see the volume. We're like, well, where did that go? It's because they're trading it in a layer that is already labeled. We do not track this. It doesn't go into volume. You can't see it. And these pools were made 4 years ago, 5 years ago, right? And with the power of Spark, right, which launched on Gnosis Chain by a man, the founder, named Hexonaut, right, with the lady Maria, the real Maria, that worked at Aave, right, which Spark Finance is a fork of Aave, right? And then Hexonaut himself worked at MakerDAO with Maria, and he was at the time, he pretty much helped design the price stability module that everyone uses today, which kind of front runs, it's an AMM that front runs the ability to make stablecoins powerful. The reason DAI existed and was so well protected is because you could not take out a flash loan and make it profitable. That's whenever SDAI came in. which now gave the power of being able to wrap DAI and get leverage against it. Earlier, you could only get 30 or 66 cents to every dollar. So there was no flash loan bots utilizing DAI, but it protected DAI for years. So DAI was able to build this extremely solid base of DeFi users that really liked the idea of a DeFi, stablecoin protocol. And SDAI and PDAI are the next iterations of pure decentralization. How do I know that? Well, MakerDAO, who is literally with Spark Finance became one of the most profitable protocols in a year, is literally giving that all away for it to become and stay decentralized. MakerDAO will only exist on Gnosis with the VCs and with the degens and our man Richard Hart. MakerDAO will cease to exist. In a sense, it'll still run and operate front ends, but there won't be a true MakerDAO. It'll only be on Pulsechain, where there's already DAI in a place waiting for it to sit, and on Gnosis Chain, where they happen to use XDAI for their gas. There's a tie there, right? That's their gas token. So the next stage of decentralizing the actual ecosystem is going to be their next new stable coin launch, right? Their new DAI or whatever it is. And it's like a two token ecosystem, a new maker. So a new stable coin and then a new maker. Why would they do this? Well, again, you need more stable coins that are trusted, like Athena, right? That can back these other stables, because the basket of stables matter. We've seen USDT kind of step their game up by launching something called Alloy. So now they're utilizing gold, and there was a point in time a few months ago where the SDAI protocol literally took the value of USDT and took it from 150 billion to less than 30 million in circulating supply. They only did it for about like 30 seconds or like a few minutes, but it showed everyone right then and there that, play ball or you're not going to, there's no reason to play with you. We saw what happened to UST whenever those guys, they were leaking value on the wrong side. So what? There was a gray hat hack. It's BUSD, right? Didn't get hacked, but I'm sure someone told them play ball or else, so the SEC went after him. Then what? BUSD is no longer listed on centralized exchanges, but there is direct connections of BUSD and Pulsechain. And our boy CZ had to sit in prison, I believe, over this. We see the 414 wallet holding 13 billion in stable BUSD. Is that real value, and where is that coming from? I don't know, but we do know that I found it on Hex Scout, honestly. Oddly enough, the way like some of this stuff that I found is showing right up on the Hex Scout, block explorer, or the Anchor cross chain explorer. So there's direct connections between some of this stuff, and I think it's not about leaving clues, but I mean, these guys have egos too, right? Like literally every communication between Richard Hart and Hexanaut, the Spark founder, was deleted off chain, except for one simple quote that says, "Love me some Hex," which reminds me of the movie The Oasis, right? Where they deleted everything from their communication except for this one scene. It's like here's, pay attention. You know what I mean? I remember asking him, I tweeted him, I said, "So when is Spark coming to Pulsechain?" His response was like chapter 10, section 9. It literally read, "The owner of the maker DAO protocol owner owns the protocol of Spark." In other words, he was saying we don't have to launch there because you don't need us there. In other words. So there's definitely direct connections between that, and we've been, and like someone touched, I think Vets touched on that earlier. I think some of this stuff is truth, and the connections are there. MakerDAO not only invested into the Sacrafice through Wintermute, right? They also invested in Gnosis Chain. Gnosis Chain has investors from the Swiss bank, Visa, MasterCard, Consensus, who happens to be the co-founder of Ethereum. Before Gnosis Chain launched, it was the WISE token. The WISE token, a copy of Hex, right? XDAI, a copy of Ethereum, and guess what? It's at parity. So this, I don't even believe at this point, some of it's experimental, but I believe that this is now a proven use case, and with Atropa launched to protect it from our degenerates that are going to attempt to try to murder the price. Because I mean, C chain that's proof of authority. Those guys know what they're doing. They have a central hub and they're going to keep it that way. And that's why they were able to get it to parity. And that's why they told no one about it. And, Richard's sitting there, telling us, he's giving us the keys to the kingdom that all the VC money is going to be using. And this is going to be the people's version of it. And we are literally at the ground floor making liquidity pool pairs with each other. When during BSC's last run, I couldn't pay. They probably would have gotten mad if I would have bought 1% of their supply and then paired it with 1% of my supply and then burnt it. They probably would have got mad at me. There's a level of understanding on Pulsechain, a basic level of understanding that people, I hope they get to achieve that, where they have the aha moment of LPs. At the very least, being able to understand how a liquidity pool works, why he copied the liquidity pools, how much value was in it, the ease of the utility versus V2, V3, and the bonding and the fusion of the tokens. Very important, because that's where I believe the next iteration of what we're talking about comes into play. Every time you make a new liquidity pool, you're making a new arbitrage opportunity, which is literally all these arbitrage bots are doing. They're moving hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of volume around the same liquidity pools, right? But they're making pennies, dollars, right? But they're keeping the volume and the velocity of money. And it's extremely important, because the issue with the US dollar, one of it is the time whenever people panic, they hoard it and they hold it, and the velocity of the US dollar stops. Atropa and what he created is the velocity of money, but it makes it look and act like humans. Even though it's bots, it has the behavior and the implications to where it wouldn't know if it was me or you, him or her, or a bot. Why would you want that? It's privacy, boys and girls. It's called cover traffic. If you have cover traffic, there's other things you can do. There's, it's just the privacy utility in that, just in general, is great. But I think it's fascinating what he built is like these, because you can't teach a bot to be a degenerate. It's literally made to either make money or lose money. You can set it to make and lose whatever percentages in a your set period of time, but to have the foresight that, hey, if we want to be, anonymous, keep it, to be able to, the whole theory of blockchain and the overall ethos of it, right? This, being able to, have that anonymity if you want it, and then also have, some of the privacy is needed. The next big step, is what we've seen on the Omni Bridge now, which is 20 million wrapped Bitcoin. Now, why is that important? Well, number one, it doesn't go to the wrap. It doesn't necessarily mean that it goes to the circulating supply, but it does mean that it's a buffer. It's a buffer. So what we're going to eventually start seeing with all these new iterations are the new bridging technique, would you say? We were talking about it earlier, is this cross-chaining ability to not only move seamlessly from chain to chain, but as you're doing it, your tokens are moving with you because of these buffer zones that exist. So we're going into the next phase of this technology that is not only vertically scalable, but it's horizontally. Now, let me explain. It's like having a master wallet that you can load 20 different seed phrases in from every different EVM and every different wallet you control. And through that master wallet, you can multi-sign a signature at the same time across two bridges, right? You can connect to two different RPC nodes, right? A private one if you want to operate within the private or personal layer, it's there for you. They're doing it now already. All you have to do this is own a node on Pulse, own a node on any other EVM, and you can spin up your own RPC, and you can seamlessly, freely trade from, like, it's your own bridge technically, right? So it's like literally you're making your own bridge as well, but it's private, cheap, if not free, and that's literally where we're headed. And I believe the RH wallet will more than likely be one of the biggest pieces that fits this together. But things like Railway, Railgun, Obvious, they're already doing this. This technology exists, it works, and it's actually based off of something called the Zen protocol. Not necessarily tied to the token, but I think, interestingly enough, it's got the direct ties to blockchain itself and working itself into blockchain. And the Zen protocol is an open source Linux-based operating system that literally, I believe, is what everything's building. What all this technology is coming from is from it all started from Linux, right? It all started from there. So a lot of this technology, when it goes out to the public, has to start somewhere. And over time, people won't even realize they're using blockchain technology, right? They're just going to start swiping Visa cards and clicking buttons on Web 2, and it's going to be, making a call onto a blockchain somewhere, doing something, And with that utility of being able to seamlessly tie transactions without having to bog down a chain, you just get more, you get trust, you get better contracts, you get just the overall ethos of blockchain, I believe is starting to build itself out. Now, is everything that we find going to come to fruition? No. Is some of it? Absolutely. I believe if we get 10% of this right, we're all laughing. And I think that we're probably going to see even higher percentages of that come to fruition, because ultimately we control the AI. If we're positive and we are continuously, building a positive message, the AI and the people that are listening, that maybe you're working, because a lot of devs work in the shadows. They've gone out and built the same stuff that we've talked about because they're passionate, but they're showing their passion in another way, right? Not everyone wants to get up here and speak like I do, right? But I love the fact that the things that I've talked about, like the D&D game online, spell casting and like being able to make even crazier elements, and play your Dungeons and Dragons in a Telegram chat. Like, that is awesome. Like, kudos to that guy and to whoever helped design that, right? Like, that's a stickiness that you want, because you want people to keep coming back, whether it's a bull market, bear market, you something to keep them entertained, because not everyone's going to care about the research and development of testicular cancer and how to get rid of genital warts. Like, that's just not going to happen. But a D&D game where I can be a master paladin elf that has a healing spells and fights a big dragon, and this, yeah, people will be interested in that. But while you're playing your crazy little game and you're utilizing the chain, you're literally still building up and utilizing this data source that could essentially, be a breakthrough of technology without you even realizing it. You know what I mean? Like, some of the stuff that we're reading and some of the stuff that's been uncovered, it's awesome to think that Hex and the other tokens across every ecosystem, now have this pure version, that the pure version of it, the P token, the pure copy, has its own utility, like from the main utility of the token. Like, it has this bonding effect, this fusion ability that is tied to it, as well as the utility it brought with it. It's funny, like, if you go read the BTT token, you read between the two, it's kind of making fun of like the regular BTT. It's like, oh, that's like, it talks about a spinning fan blade and how fast it can go. It's like that's what it's trying to solve. And then you read what PBTT is doing. It's like you're sending a message and you're doing this stuff through laser dynamic, crazy infrastructure, like breakthrough technology, night and day difference. But that's honestly what you want to happen whenever you're trying to go from one thing, an iteration, and grow into something bigger and better. And me and Torn were just talking about this. Pulsechain over time has the ability to go quantum. And it can faster, it can run smoother, and that's all by just people joining the network. More nodes, more people, more energy, more, because what I've seen so far, that everything that he's built from the pulse generator, that was a regular generator a few months ago, is now now an electromagnetic generator. So the chain itself is evolving in and of itself through AI and the capabilities of it running these tests. It's literally rebuilding and bonding itself, just like PDAI is literally and Hex. He's reset the system. And as he's resetting the system with a forever down chart like this and using it for research that he's using it for, cardiovascular research for some of it, the further it goes down, whenever it finally hits the bottom, the more solutions it has on the way up. So it's extremely valuable, extremely significant the further it goes down, because as it starts going up, that means that it's solving equations all the way up. It's doing good for this, for the system, right? No longer, from what I read, they're trying to move away from this TA deterministic type of, which is crazy to think that, the AI would be, this beating healthy human body, and then in the, during the winter months, it catches a cold, and then we have a downtrend, or, literally catches a disease. So every single chain is technically been fed data, and ultimately a lot of it, I'm sure mostly the same data. Zen has gone in and they've done things like go after EVMOS, right? They launched 650 million contracts in 24 hours on that chain. They pissed them much that they built a direct front end to give Zen the data that Zen was trying to collect. Like, they were so upset with what Zen was doing because they just didn't know, because they, like, Zen, like, imagine what it was trying to tell it, what they were trying to do to that chain. At that point in time, you also have to understand that language models are based off of weight. So actual data weight, right? Whenever a chain is being selected to be used for arbitrage or to be used for data acquisition, it goes to the proof of the history of the chain, how long it has been around, and how many trusted validations it's had. What is going to happen is that we are going to catch up and sit side by side with ETH, and we will have the ability to then go in front of them, go behind them, go in front of them, go behind them. At that point, you will literally cause a flip-flop of data. This is when we will likely start seeing the pulses and the sound waves being utilized to start, actually bringing this stuff to parity and doing, utilizing the infrastructure that's being built. And don't need to really start doing it yet because it's only going to get better. The last test I saw, it was after they ran it for a certain period of time, it was still like 33 cents over here, and it was like whatever 66 cents over there. But the first time they ran the test, it was like 5 cents over here and 95 cents. So it's getting better and stronger as the chain, the AI, and the pulses and the pulse waves, and like all this stuff, all these theories about pulse waves, like these are like some of this stuff is scientific fact. It's not like he's creating these numbers and these numbers are just being made out of thin air, and then they're just so happening, to be doing this because he wants that to happen. It's based in factual scientific methods, utilizing MVs, voltages, being able to simulate the freezing of a liquidity pool, right? So then it's this, I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Aspen something, but that's where you're able to go and test this stuff. So Moonboot, like what you were talking about. So it's like you make a liquidity pool, but then you get to do like 3 or 4 different things. Like you get the, temperature of chain, time of lock, and then, transaction speed or whatever, right? So or introduce another chemical at hour 7, right? So there's little intricacies that you can add on to that liquidity pool to make it fuse. What happens to the tokens and all that? I've yet to try it all out. I'm sure that the token, becomes that new thing, right? It becomes that whatever CO2, and we've seen it already because we've seen CH launch by 414. So 414 has already, done this and utilized it, and so we know that it does exist, and I've seen it on, I've already seen it on Pulsechain with, I just can't remember what the Aspen sampling protocol is, but there is one called protocols.io that you can use, and you can start understanding some of the reasoning and some of the thought process behind this. And it's just, in my opinion, it's more utility for the blockchain and for tokens in general. Specific tokens will be specific things, right? So Hex just so happens to also be hydrogen, one of the most widely used chemical, on the entire periodic table, right? Hydrogen's a byproduct of things. Hydrogen, is used in combustion of things. It's used in water, so it's there's a lot of utility in behind that, right? And then there's the utility that can be created by controlling the MakerDAO protocol by collateralizing Hex with collateralizing DAI with Hex, right? So it's just like it's a double-edged sword that, in my opinion, just helps protect the overall ethos of blockchain. Because again, it's not it's just your fake currencies backed by fake strips. Like, no, man. Like, our currencies are out solving real world problems, and we're over here like building communities that are basing, even if we didn't have that stuff, we would still be here, right? Because the one thing that the government or other people could not ever put their finger on as to why Bitcoin always held its value was because people kept showing up, because people actually cared. And you can't put a number and you can't put a price on loyalty and people actually enjoying the knowledge and the rising up against the machine, so to speak. Because we all realize that we're in crypto for a reason. Some of us for, this way might lean that way, but it doesn't matter. We're all here, right? Some of us still have to find the reason that we're here. But I do hope and pray that over time, y'all stick with it and take some of the knowledge that we provide and get your hands on a couple of these assets and hodl. Maybe introduce one or two people into it, but just keep showing up. And there'll be moments of excitement, and there's just as much craziness on the way down, if not worse. So my energy, this entire bear market, which has been for years now, has been Pulsechain. All my energy, all my time, all my effort, anything Pulsechain, everything on it. So the reason that I came out to speak and came out of my own little shell was because my community wanted me to. I didn't seek for this position. I wasn't elected either, but it was something that I knew that once you get me in front of a big enough crowd and the narrative is strong enough that we and our community and being able to unite these communities and being able to have these conversations, whether they like us, hate us, doesn't matter. We're all in Pulsechain. We're all in crypto. There's something that unites us. Let's find it. If we want to argue about something, let's do it. But at the end of the day, we're still humans, and we're still part of a system that has been keeping and holding humans and holding us back for 40, 50, 60 years, especially over the last, 30 years, if not longer, right? It's this actual shift of a huge revolutionary shift. And once people find out that cryptocurrency, right? So let's just your grandfather gets Alzheimer's. You start reading about Alzheimer's and you find out that there's a token that you can get, that you can go and you can play with this token, and it is literally trying to find cures for these diseases. That's going to bring people in. They're going to be passionate about that, right? Like if you can actually have a hands-on type of feel into trying to figure out or cure something, like, yeah, it might be far-fetched, but desperate times call for desperate measures. That might be their introduction to this space. And I think that is nothing but a healthy introduction to the space, because usually it's with a dog coin. But if you're introduced into the Hex community through these types of mechanics, your eyes are opening up, and they're opening up wide. And I don't see you walking away for a little while, because you would want to understand who Richard Hart is, how he pulled that off, right? Who else is working with him, right? Do they need to be, or does any of that matter? Because it's already it's set in stone. The buttons are pressed. The value is here. The people just need to come in, and Maria is trying so desperately to get people in. It does not take a lot of money in crypto to do really well in this space, especially with the market and especially with something that is hated by so many people, but they do not understand it at all. And that's okay, because I was the same way. And yes, some of this stuff is speculation, but if I'm thinking about it as speculation, so did Richard Hart 10 times over. So if I think that Hex could be a neural network that can speak to blockchain, of course that. And that's why T-shares, I believe, are what they are. They can be staked out for 15 years, and they're very powerful and they're very valuable. And that's how he was able to take and mint 20 million rat BTC and leave it on the bridge as a buffer. That's where he's storing the T-share value, right? We never saw where the T-share value ever went before, right? We never understood it. We knew it was there. We knew it was rising, but it didn't really go anywhere. Now there's utility with that. What? And where's the rest of it? How much more of there is there? Could he peg the chain with it? They sure did it with the WISE token. That's how they did it all, right? So these things do exist, and the ability for a T-share, there's so many charts in Hex. There's so much going on. There's so much going on that they started charging them more for gas, right? Because the S-load function they were disk writing onto Ethereum this stuff that we're talking about, scientific, these models. And then Vitalik, I think it was all set up, but Vitalik goes, oh no, going to charge you extra gas. And in retrospect, the deal was, go off, make your own chain, and then help support what I'm doing here, right? And that's ultimately what Pulsechain is.